I love talking about fire on the mountain.
Perfect. So, yeah, go ahead. Jordan, why don't you tell us about Fire on the Mountain?
I'd love to. So Fire on the Mountain is the restaurant which I started with my business partner, Sarah, who actually know her through Lisa when I was, it all kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier, like when we started seeing Panic shows all together, our group of friends around, like 99, 2000. But first off, I've always just loved hot sauces and making hot sauces. And actually, where we went to high school, I don't know if you remember Mrs. Fox Davidson, she taught chemistry. Anyway, in high school, I made some peanut sauce, which was actually part getting all the way back to the Grateful Dead. I remember like in Dead Lots, a lot of times there was spicy peanut pasta, cold sesame noodles for sale. And I just have always loved that, and peanut butter and peanut sauces. And I started making my own and started giving it to my teacher in high school. Eventually that evolved to making, like when we were seeing Panic, the group of us, we would sell t-shirts. We would also make some peanut pasta and sell it in the lot, like at Red Rocks, and when Panic played in Larkspur. And but also I always wanted to open a restaurant ever since high school. Like senior year, I remember like realizing this is what I want to do. And always part of it for me, when I would just go to restaurants and spaces, I would just be very cognizant of it, and like spaces would make an impression on me. This is like kind of how it ties into venues. But I think that was part of why I wanted to open a restaurant. I just always envisioned like creating a space that was a good place for people to hang out and eat. So anyway, fast forward to like Lisa, when she was raft guiding down in Buena Vista, I went down to visit her and met her friend Sarah, and it turned out that Sarah just had the same dreams as far as opening a restaurant. And like around this time, we were traveling and seeing Panic and making pasta, selling t-shirts. Sarah and I would talk about this idea for a restaurant. And then when I was in college, it was like freshman year, I remember there was a lot of good wing joints where I went to college in Bloomington. And just remember, I was like, this is my favorite thing to do. Just drink beer and eat wings with friends. So then, and I had a lot of ideas kicking around. Like for a little while, it was a sandwich shop, but then wings, like really, like this is where it's at. Just with my love of hot sauce, and I love the communal aspect of eating wings and sharing it with friends. So anyway, fast forward to like around 2000 or so, Sarah and I would kind of, maybe a little bit more like 2001 or so. Anyway, we would just kind of talk about this idea, and it just gained momentum. And, then this turned into 2003, and we just got serious about it. And we decided that we were going to do it. And we were trying to figure out where we wanted to do this. And we were both living in Colorado at the time. And we thought about doing it in the mountains of Colorado. But ultimately, we decided, a friend of ours had moved to Oregon, and he knew that what we were planning. And he's like, you should come check out Portland, Oregon. It's an awesome place to live. No chicken wing joints out here. So we visited Portland, and it seemed like a cool spot, place where just beautiful outdoorsy stuff, and where there was lots of the good music scene. Anyway, we 2005 opened up our first Fire in the Mountain in Portland, Oregon. And it's been great. It's sort of become an institution in Portland, and it was a hit from the get-go. We ended up expanding a few years later because we were starting in a small space, and there was a huge demand for our chicken wings in another part of town. And yeah, so then we ended up opening up a third one about 11 years ago, and we're opening one in Bend this summer. But it's been great. It definitely, like I was saying, just love food and love how food can bring people together, just like music. And you know, Fire in the Mountain plays into obviously my love of the Grateful Dead. And you know, back in the day, I had envisioned opening up a restaurant that served spicy food somewhere in the mountains. So that's kind of how that name came about. And
I
so
remember that. I remember living with you, and you would make the soon to be famous peanut pasta. And we would come home from the bars and you would make this pasta peanut sauce. And it was so good. It was so good. I feel like I might have been one of the first people to taste that version of the pasta.
I think so. And now, and Brian, like she's a rap guide also, when she's not doing radio shows. But she makes peanut pasta on the river. It's actually compatible with that.
Oh, it's great. It's famous on river trips. Yes.
So yeah, so Fire in the Mountain also. So Brian, as you know, we used to have live music there, and our first location, Interstate, super small. It's like a 1,200 square foot building. And if I remember correctly, you came out and played there with Eric Martinez. Your band was B&E.
That's
right?
it. The great Eric Martinez. Absolutely. That was awesome.
So it all kind of comes full circle here. Yeah, Lisa was actually at our opening night at the Interstate location. Lisa actually chalked our first menu blackboard.
It was crazy. We were like hanging up my boyfriend at the time like hung the paper towel holder in the bathroom. It was coming together, as you know, it was. And Sarah's famous thing was, you know, we're hanging paper towel holders, and she's like, Jordan's working on the playlist for tonight. That's his job right now. We don't know where he is. We're pretty sure he's working on the playlist.
I was finding the right Let's Get Down to Business to play.
I mean, it's important. And I think you and Sarah are the perfect, if Sarah owned a restaurant by herself, it would be pretty well run and, you know, kind of organized, and it would have like one painting hanging on the wall with like cobwebs on it and have really not a whole lot of aesthetic. And if you owned a restaurant by yourself, it would be the coolest, hippest looking place and have the best playlist, and the sauces would be amazing, and no one would be paying the bills. So you guys are like the perfect, you're the perfect combo. I'm so glad.
That's awesome. Funny you say that. Yeah.
I mean, now I'm sure it's different. I'm sure the roles have changed a little bit, but at the time, and Sarah had a ton of restaurant experience. I mean, she worked in restaurants. Didn't you say, Jordan, that you had a job once where you told them that you had waited tables before? And they were like, okay, come on in and work the lunch shift. And I've waited tables a lot. And that they walked up to you halfway through the shift and they were just like, yeah, I don't think it's going to work out.
Yeah, Brian, you might remember the place, the Spare Rib in Comac. But nice. Yeah, this was after college. My parents were like, whoa, you're getting fired from a restaurant, like your first shift, like after we yeah.
Well, if you tell someone I can wait tables and then they put you on the floor and you're starting to do it, they can tell immediately if you don't know how to do that. I mean, it's not difficult once you learn how to do it, but it is a very specific skill and it is a challenge, and you have to be good at it. And if you try to do it without knowing what you're doing, some of the worst minutes and hours I've ever spent in my life have been waiting tables where it's crazy busy and you're just like, I literally want to walk away. I just want to walk out right now. There's too much. I can't do it anymore. I don't care if you want more fucking salsa. It's over. Like, I can't do it anymore. But
yeah, thanks for making me feel better, because Yeah, I think my parents are still mad at me. I think I got fired from another job that summer cleaning pools where I forgot to put the chlorine tablets in. But um,
So how do you go from wing maven to I want to start this platform to get information and reviews about live music venues?
yeah, great question. Um, well, yeah, I've been seeing, like yourself, like you guys, been seeing shows since, for gosh, like 35 years or so now. And every time I go to a show, I just have questions about the venue, and as do the people that I go to shows with. And I remember last summer, like seeing Phish at Alpine Valley, and people were just nobody could get Wi-Fi there, and there was just like confusion about like some people had heard you could get Wi-Fi and tap into the venue's Wi-Fi, and they were just like people were so confused at the end of the show, like knowing where to go, like where to get picked up, and there's just that type of scenario like every show where people are just like, there's got to be another entrance to go into that has a shorter line, um or like where do we go eat, hang out before the show or after, and you know there's just always all these questions like when you're in the venue, is there a shorter bathroom line somewhere, or like we were talking about GA venues, is there somewhere where I can sit where the sound is going to be a lot better? And I just noticed that everybody seems to have these questions. So it's like, I wish that there was some sort of somewhere I could go where I could just get all this information before the show. It just seemed to me that there was just like a real need for it. And I was started talking to people about it, and everybody kind of echoed, had the same sentiment. Like, whoa, yeah, we need that. I think that's a great idea. And then people would also chime in like, yeah, well, it would be great to know, um, like where I can go to get a lift. And just every time I would talk to somebody about the idea, people would chime in with like a different thing problem that they encounter at a venue, or something that they would want to know about a venue. So it just kind of snowballed. And so this is about, I'm not sure when you and I got in touch about this idea, but probably
I
almost
think
a
it was,
year ago.
yeah, it was September.
Yeah, I
think.
think it was after, it was after seeing Phish at Dick's. I remember just telling more people about this and just encountering a lot of these things at Dick's. And I was just thinking about you and your history, and how just your background, and just about how you have started platforms like the tape trading and the BMX and being Panic's webmaster, and just knowing your just love of music, and that decided to run the idea by you, and you seemed to think it was a good idea, and that it was in your wheelhouse as far as something that you could do. And I knew it, yeah, that
Yeah,
and for me, like anytime I want to start an adventure, I want to do it with someone that'll be fun to do it with, and that shares the same love of music and such.
yeah, right on. I think the other thing that's so interesting, and like probably another, again, like it's so surreal living through what I'm now seeing as like these cultural generational shifts.
Yeah.
But it definitely seems like we are now, well, certainly obviously the age demo to go see Phish and Dead and Company skews a little older, right? It's probably not the same demo as Goose, for
Right.
example. But
Yeah.
point being is that I think in general we're all now used to getting information, and we want the information because why should it be available? Just make it available, right? And so I think that's kind of what's happened. There's this lag. The information exists, But what I'm finding in doing all this research on these venues is they're not getting it out. And so I mean, so from their perspective, I would think they want this they certainly would want it out there. It makes their lives easier, whether it's having to move through a smoother entrance process or something like that. But so there's just like this lag in info. And so now if there's one spot, and yeah, you can go chase it down and go to all these different websites and whatever and message boards. And so that's, I think, the problem. And so like the internet does make it easy to consolidate stuff and bring, a certain group or a certain interest together in kind of a unique way that you couldn't do, 20 years ago. And so, yeah, it's interesting. And I think, as we've discussed, like we're going to learn what fans kind of want or what their priorities are, as they use the site and as they interact and communicate. And like, I know it might seem obvious, but I was kind of surprised that the real need or want for like these bag policies and these water policies. And so like, okay, if that's an easy thing to remedy, we have a database now where we can just kind of spit that information out and create those, those bulletins or whatever they are. So I think depending on what kind of information, the fans want, it'll have a nice home at VL for sure. But there's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it.
When I first heard about it, go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, I was just going to say real quickly that there's just an opportunity for this. There's just an opportunity for venues to do a better job in the sense of just making the experience a lot better for people that go to shows. And I would love, for this to be a platform and just to, not in a contrary way, but to work with venues and all together kind of see what people are looking for and what could better the experience. And so that's also like when you're asking why, I think that this could just help everybody, help showgoers, help venues, just make the experience better and, and help people choose, also make more informed decision as far as what shows and where to go, what venues to go to.
When I heard about the idea, I loved it because I think when you see as many shows, some people are going to go to one concert a year, that they're going to go see Taylor Swift or they're going to go see whoever. And it's this one-time thing because that person happens to be touring. But for us, this is something we do multiple times a year and we're never really planning on stopping. And so you get to know your home venues so well. And when I go somewhere like Red Rocks or wherever, I know what I'm getting myself into. So then when I travel somewhere new to see a show, I'm like, I want a friend to tell me, hey, this is what you do. This is where we go. Here, come in this entrance. And yeah, you can bring your water bottle or no, you can't, or don't bring that bag or do bring this thing. And when you don't have a friend that lives in that place, I feel lost. Like as a sort of professional concert goer, I am feeling like I'm missing a piece of my puzzle. And so to have Venue Llama is like always having a friend who lives in that city and has been to that venue a bunch of times. And you can get on there and you can check out the scene and hear how it is. And that is comforting to me. Because that first night of a 3-night run in a new city, it's like, I don't know. I feel like the venue websites are often so unhelpful with the real stuff I want to know. Like maybe I could go on there and tell, like, do I need a clear bag or something like that? But very rarely do I ever even use that as a resource. We're almost just like, well, let's show up and see how it is tonight, and then we'll know what to do tomorrow.
Yeah, it's funny. So sure. I think like what I've noticed, the venue websites, like with many of these things, the information is there. I think it in some cases, I should say, but they don't make it. It's tough. You got to click a lot of stuff. And so, so like, we're just trying to be like, okay, here's all the info. boom, you can just go scroll. Here's all the info. Now, here is community feedback. Here is someone who's been there. Here is someone who can tell you a little bit about it. And that's the difference. But I think, like everything, it's always about like ease of use and accessibility. And like, if I'm at a show or wherever and I want to look at something on my phone, I want to just be able to maybe just, enter the venue name and then, okay, here's everything. Cool.
Yeah.
And I'm, it's, we're serving a different purpose, I think, than, a venue information site. And again, like, there's so many different degrees of venues. There are these big time Madison Square Garden, there are Wrigley Park, there, and then there's the Georgia Theater, and then there's, something really tiny or like a Smith's Old Bar, things like that. So there's all these different levels, and some venues, it's not make or break some of them, but some smaller venues, they have some good information. They, like I've always said to Jordan, that's a way to like tip somebody over the fence to get them to go to the show. Because it's so funny, but there are folks who get, who do have anxiety of just, just the normal, like, all right, what's happening here? What do I have to do? Da, 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 da. And so I think it makes it easier to make those decisions. If you know a certain thing, like you can go without worry, you can pop right out and get a lift. It's not going to be an issue. You're not going to be waiting for an hour, or it's not a shitty area, or you don't have to you don't have to worry about that crap if that's what's preventing you from going to see this band that your buddy told you to go check out, or it's super easy, just hop on. That's the other thing too. If I knew, like, especially in sometimes in Atlanta, if like I didn't have to go to Midtown or whatever, if I could just take MARTA and pop off in one stop, those things, if I knew that, okay, just like in Manhattan, someone tells you, oh, if you want to go here, take this train, do this, and then you're there, and it's easy. If you don't know, then it becomes a puzzle. So
Totally.
Yeah.
There's
And even the things that are a pain, like at Red Rocks is one of the most high maintenance venues I've ever been to. It's just tough, but it is what it is. It's also one of the most epic venues in the world. And I'm okay with that because I know what I'm getting myself into. And if you show up there and you don't know that, half of the battle is your expectation, right? They say having low expectation is the key to happiness. Well, having an expectation around a venue that is realistic is the key to a good night. Like, if you expect to show up and not park in a parking lot that's like a half mile away from where you need to be, and you don't get there on time and yada, yada, like, if you know that from the beginning, that's half the battle, It's not that big a deal once you know what you're getting yourself into. But if you don't know, then you're pissed and fired up, and it doesn't seem fun anymore.
It's funny you say that, Lisa, and that's great. There, we had been letting people know about Venue Llama on some Reddit pages and such. And there was one comment from somebody who said, well, doesn't this take the magic out of it? Just, the adventure of not knowing. And it's an interesting thing because, I mean, I do, think that we all do love adventure, and that's, a lot of why we, also like the music that we do, is because you don't know what's going to happen every night, and there's a lot of adventure in that. So it was interesting when, when somebody said that, because I get that, and there is that level, of going to a new venue in a new city. That being said, you can still, I think sometimes, like, knowing, like your water situation, you can't experience adventure like if you're dehydrated and you're about to about to pass out. So I think a lot of the stuff that we can provide is not taking the magic out of it, but just helping people, just not to sound cheesy, but like helping their experience and just being able to experience that, like in a better way. But it was interesting to hear somebody say that, because I don't know, maybe some people don't want this information, and maybe that does make the experience more adventurous for them. Not trying to dissuade people from using the Venue Llama, but it was just
if you don't like knowing ahead, then you don't have to look at the website. But I think that the information I want is my logistical information. It's like, I want my friend to tell me, oh, you better get to that venue early because their security line is always a mess. And that's not something that's going to be on the website of the venue. They're not going to tell you, we're really going to check you hard, get here early. Like your friend has to tell you that. But I also think that information isn't what's magical about my experience.
Right.
Sure.
That's not the adventure.
No, that's not the adventure. The adventure is when I get inside and I see the whatever the venue is, and I'm, that there's lots of adventure to be had, but the logistical information that I think Venue Llama will help me with in those venues I haven't been to, that is not the magic.
Exactly.
And I will say, like, getting, back to, like, Brian's question, and I also think that Venue Llama can really help just local businesses out. I envision it as, a way to showcase just people that are just doing good things with their businesses, like around the venue. If they're just restaurants or bars or shops, just that, people would really appreciate, and businesses that deserve to be supported. I feel like it could really help out some small businesses around venues as well, just to just have them gain some more traction and get some more visibility.
For sure.
I think that could be a really cool thing.
Yeah, especially as we've discussed, if like there are some of these destination venues, right? Like, so certainly around those venues, some of those local businesses could certainly benefit. But yeah, the other thing is, I was just thinking about in general, like I keep mentioning it. Maybe it's because it's, it's just me. I just turned 50 or whatever. But like, there are these things, the adventure, which was absolutely a major part of, I'm sure, why all of us are where we are. But a lot of that, at least for me, was something, that I was happy and wholeheartedly pursued when I was, a little younger, because I didn't have those, and not like, I'm against adventure, but it's different. I didn't have those responsibilities. Like I might need, now it's like, okay, I would like to get home maybe by X amount, X time, because I have to do something tomorrow, or I got to take the kids to school or whatever that is. And I know I'm not alone now, with those same concerns. So, some of the adventure is, okay, yeah, I'm going to sacrifice some of that, but yeah, some of it is just about basic convenience, but at the same time, I think Venue Llama has an opportunity to kind of, as we're doing now, provide an opportunity or a showcase for different experiences past, like going through this kind of thing. I haven't had these conversations like really in a long time, and it's kind of interesting because I think there's a lot we can draw from, from other folks who've done these kinds of, gone to multiple shows and have whatever. Like there's just a lot that we can kind of, I don't know, bring to the front. There's so much behind the scenes stuff. And I'm finding that, I think all of us are finding that these days on the internet now with all the podcasts, there's just so much stuff out there, content, stories, lore that just exists that, we never had a chance to kind of delve into because not everybody had a studio and could connect with this kind of ease until really in the last couple of years. And so I think Venue Llama has a shot to just be an interesting kind of content hub for all kinds of live music. And we've talked about doing features on certain venues, and then there's going to be those bands who you could take Tom Petty. You could do a story about how Tom Petty had this residency where, I can't even remember where it was, at the Fillmore, or, the Allman Brothers at the Beacon, and on and on. And so, there's just a lot, the Capitol Theater, and I don't know. I think there's just a lot in there because all of these things are becoming much more historic. And especially as we're seeing how, like, as you mentioned earlier, like every stadium is now a bank or a beer or, whatever it is. And so they're just a vessel for advertising. So yeah, I think there's going to be some, not just nostalgia, but like a need for these kinds of real, like, venues that are about something other than a sponsor banner.
Right. For sure.
And I
And
think
it's something that
sorry, Jordan, we live in a world now where we're used to getting information. Like you said, when you rolled up to Palace Solari in 1997, you just drove into the dirt parking lot because you saw a little sign. But we were people who operated in that world at that time. And I think there's a lot of younger people going to concerts. And, by younger, I mean like 35, like people who grew up knowing things on the internet, people who grew up, if you were seeing shows starting in 2005, you were used to having, maybe you had to print out MapQuest on a piece of paper, but you had somewhere besides like your Thomas guide to get your directions to get to a venue. And people are used to having that information now. So the magic has been, if we're talking about the magic of you rolling in 1997 to this parking lot and to a venue that you really can't even see from the parking lot, like it's sort of this mystery. There are still mysteries to be had, but it's nice to know where you're going. And it's kind of nice to be able to get that information. And with us being so used to that, this is filling a void that I didn't know where to go to get this information, and I wanted it. And why not get it?
Yeah, cool. I agree. It's something interesting too, like as we've been just getting the word out about Venue Llama and talking to people about it. There have been musicians and this one guy who used to manage bands, which sounds like there was potentially a lot of interest from musicians and management about having a portal for them in the future, because the same thing, like when we're looking, choosing venues to go to, the musicians and management and promoters, they're all going through the same process. And I was talking to somebody who's involved with band management recently, and he was saying, yeah, a lot of times there's a gig and the promoter is confused, like why, all signs were pointing towards a crowded show and people didn't show up. And he was saying that a lot of times there's just not a lot of work done, to kind of see what it, like what is enticing to the showgoer. And, if this can provide a venue for, musicians and management to also just discuss and just have some, feedback about venues, that they'll have more to go on as far as, where they're choosing to play or where they're choosing to book shows. So I'm kind of excited about that. That might be a little bit down the line, but
that I think is a real avenue to help out the venues, to be honest. So like, and the smaller ones, and definitely the musicians for sure. But I think what happens is there's a lot of bands, and maybe they're playing, some venue or whatever, and they're not doing any real promotion. And some of them, it's about bringing bodies into the room. That's how they're going to get paid. And so obviously the whole thing is about promotion and getting people to the show. And so if a band, like there are some venues that do a great job with publicity, right? There might be a venue that'll print up a bunch of stuff, run ads in like the Creative Loafing or the Westward or whatever it is, and then there are venues that don't do anything, don't even put it on their website. So there's different levels. And so if you know that, this venue isn't going to do X amount of promotion or whatever, then certainly a management, can make those adjustments if that's something they want to do. Another thing is if you're just traveling, some venues really don't, like, depends on your level, right? But like some vans, will provide catered food, some will provide nothing, some will provide a stipend, so you don't know. So like those kinds of things are always helpful. Is there a nice green room? Am I gonna have a place to just relax? Is there a shower there? Like, if not, that might determine what kind of hotel I get and where. And again, if you're on the road traveling, whether you're like a deadhead who's 25 or a band member who has not a lot of money to spare, all that shit makes a difference. So I think we'll find a lot of allies with that musician side of a Venue Llama on both the venue side and the band side. And then, because at the end of the day, the result will be the same. You'll have more folks getting to the shows for various reasons, whether it's us being able to kind of bridge that informational divide to the venues and the fans, or to the venues and the artists. You know, again, there's more opportunities. And like, again, these kinds of things couldn't exist because now we're literally riding that information highway, you know, and it's just about us trying to connect everything, you know, that makes sense to the right people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, I remember, I mean, like you were saying, it might be nice, you know, to know what was the venue you were at where they had to walk in like pro wrestler style.
That was the river stages in Tulsa.
River stages in Tulsa. As a musician, that's probably a nice thing to know. Like I can remember going to a little venue in Durango, and I don't think there was any backstage for the band to hang out at. We saw Bloodkin there.
Nice.
And they got off stage and it was like, okay, we're just gonna go sit over here at this corner table, and I guess this is our backstage, because there wasn't anything there. So I'm sure for them, it's, if you don't know what you got coming, you know, it's probably hard.
And then I wonder so here's the thing, at that Tulsa amphitheater, I'm sure all the Tulsa regulars obviously knew, but I mean, you know, at the time we were doing Honest Tune shit. I would have loved to have known that. We probably would have staged some sick photos, you know, but and those are the kinds of little nuggets. Now, it's not essential, right? But it does. It's one of those things that will make your experience better. It certainly has the potential to do that. So it's just why not track that?
As you're saying that too, I was thinking, you know, like obviously different shows have different vending situations, and you know, sometimes the shakedown street sometimes it's sanctioned by the venue, sometimes it's just very kind of not, and it gets busted or whatever. But that's good stuff to know, like if you are a vendor, you know.
I would
or if you're just going, like, I want to buy a t-shirt. Should I get there early? Where should I go? Oh, the shakedown's on this side. I remember at UNO in Chicago, you know, just where it was located, we kind of stumbled into it. So then, you know, we could hang out there. But if we didn't know where that was, I mean, we just got lucky and happened to be, oh God, that memory is so fuzzy, but it's, you know, you don't want it to just be luck. If you want to know where Shakedown is, it's nice to be able to say, oh, I heard Shakedown's over on this side of the venue at this exit. Let's go there, instead of wandering around and, you know.
You might not get your balloon if you don't know that.
The birthday, where's the birthday party? I want to go to the birthday party.
Exactly.
I think so many, it's so funny because there was like the issues for me that I remember just constantly was the will call, where's will call, what's this, like all of that was a constant. Now that's probably been like almost just taken care of just with everything, you know, but like
who goes to will call anymore? It's like immediately on your phone, but still.
So like, but now there are other things is like, it used to be that, like, what is it now? Like, what are those things? What it seems to be like the bag and water policy, even though that's the easiest goddamn thing to communicate. Unless I guess it's been changing a lot, or sometimes they change it. I don't know.
I think it changes per band. I know at Red Rocks, it is different for Panic. Like I said, with the GA seating too, you know, I saw Paul Simon there and we were seated, you know, even from, like, we saw Sturgill Simpson and it was like GA in the front, seated in the middle, and then GA up top. But then for like David Byrne, it was totally different. Sometimes those things are completely different per artist. And if you are there to see a band that goes every year, it's nice to be able to get on something like Venue Llama and know, like, every year Panic is going to be GA, and every year they're going to let you bring in your water bottle as long as it's empty, and you can bring in sealed water, but you probably can't bring in sealed water for all the shows there. So it's nice to be able to, again, I think of it as like having a friend in that city who can give me the beta.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Like, you know, it's because now that, again, as I've been doing so much venue research and like when you go through these sites, there's many times where the site says, please check the actual tour date listing for the artist for this specific policy. So their policy evolves. And I'm sure you're right that it's got to be dictated by, or maybe not dictated, but decided by the artist and how much sway the artist may have. So Panic probably has a ton of sway at Red Rocks in terms of being able to kind of influence.
Do what they want. Yeah. And most like Billy Strings was the same way. Like you could bring in your water bottle. I don't know if you could bring in a cooler. We didn't try to do that, but you know, to be able, or like the Hollywood Bowl. I just went to see Phish at the Hollywood Bowl, and my sister lives in LA, and she's like, oh yeah, well you can bring in wine and you can bring in, I'm like, well, that's for the Philharmonic. I'm pretty sure they're not going to let me bring in a bottle of wine for Phish. So it's just helpful. And when you have to track down, like you look at the venue and they have to be vague because they don't want to give you the wrong answer. If they say on their site, you can do X, Y, and Z, but it's not true for every show, they have to be intentionally vague. And depending on how flexible that venue is, and again, I don't know how they make those decisions. I would love to know that. I have always been really curious about that as I go to see different shows. I keep using Red Rocks as an example, but that's my hometown venue. Kind of, I don't live in Denver, but that's the venue I probably have gone to the most in my life. And I've seen how different it is for all the different artists.
Yeah. And that's why for this podcast purposes where we envision getting people from the venue on the podcast and hearing about that. And you know, like one type of person where I would love to get on is like head of security at some of the venues, because I know that, you know, like a lot of these bands, they have a close relationship with, maybe not a close relationship, but they interact closely and kind of inform the security about, you know, what the crowd is like, you know, like, you know, like I think didn't Brian and like the Dead kind of sort of work closely with security back in the day, be like, look, if you don't hassle these people, you know, they're gonna be cool. Like, but I think that the band's management, you know, does work closely at times, and it'd just be curious to hear. I don't know, maybe there's some information that they probably, you know, might be sensitive and don't want to disclose, but it'd be interesting to kind of hear how the band interacts with security and how they, you know, kind of decide how to approach, you know, security at particular shows.
Yeah, and that's where I think like the so-called jam band community is completely unique, is that because they have these, you know, subcultures in many cases traveling with them, they are afforded different you know, they're treated differently, or I mean, that's not the right way to put it. There's consideration given to that. So like, you know, like when the venue knows that, you know, the whole Panic crowd is going to clean up the entire lot for them after the show or whatever,
right?
You know, that has an impact, that kind of thing. And yeah, I think
Do we do that?
years ago, I remember being at shows where like we had a kind of a green crew, small venues, you know, but yeah, probably not anymore. But like Phish definitely did that, I believe.
Yeah, I remember hearing that when we were at the Greek, that Phish fans, they were like, Phish was here. This was back in 2001. And this place was sparkling, you know, no one left anything behind. And it's like, I really wish I could tell you that was going to happen tonight, but I don't know that that's true.
But I think,
but things like that, yes.
Well, when the Dead, you know, obviously they showed up, you know, and at first I think a lot of towns were like alarmed, and then they realized, wow, this is, 10 million into our economy if we can do this smartly. So it was different, but like, yeah, you have to take that into consideration. If you have an influx of, an extra however many thousand people it might be into the town. Yeah. I remember because I had a friend who was actually on the job in Manhattan, and this was right after Jerry died, maybe a couple of years after, and like the Phil and Friends was playing in Manhattan at some venue, and he was telling me that his cop friends had never really seen anything like that, and he had been to different Grateful Dead shows and stuff. Hey, buddy. And so he was quite familiar with that audience and that crowd, obviously, because he grew up with, some of those people. But yeah. So, and I don't know, you would think that there's some management who's saying, hey, look, they're not trouble. They're not Metallica fans, or not to say anything bad about Metallica fans, but you know what I mean? They're not there to get rowdy and get nuts in a different way, maybe.
For sure. Yeah, no, yeah. You might want to keep some extra, snacks on you to hand out, but
yeah. Exactly.
No, I mean, it's a professional crew. It's people who know how to attend concerts. We know how to do this. We do it regularly, and it is so nice when you can tell that the venue is appreciating that with us, and they are honoring that. Like, hey, we know you do this a lot, therefore we're gonna give you this license with this thing, and that feels good. And I'm sure it has to be the band advocating for their fans and telling them, no, these are not your average everyday people who go to concerts 5 times in their life. These are people who go to, they're on tour.
Yeah. And it seems like some venues are, you feel it, like that some venues are owned by music lovers, like I know, Lisa, that you've seen Panic in Milwaukee, and, just keep hearing about how awesome like the city is and the venue is, just making the crowd feel welcome, like you've been there, but I think they set up like beer vending on the streets, and like on their marquee, it's like welcome spread heads, and just stuff.
It's so great. I had to go out to Will Call, I think, because they were still doing paper tickets. So I had to go to the Will Call, and I had a beer that I got inside the venue. And at first it was like, can I even leave the venue to go out to the Will Call, or do I have to, because so many venues you can't go in and out. Another thing I would love to know on Venue Llama, is there re-entry? But I had a beer, and I was like, oh, is there somewhere I can set my beer? I have to go out to the Will Call. And the guy was just like, why do you need to put your beer down? Why don't you just take it outside with you? And I was like, that's a great question. Why don't I just take it outside with me? And I would take that beer outside because that was allowed, and you could buy it inside. I don't know that you could bring it from outside to inside, but you could, if you bought it inside, you could go outside. And it just, that small little detail made me so happy.
I remember one time like seeing Neil Young was playing at the Moda Center here in Portland, and there was like a little smoking area, like beer garden, and I sneaked in through that way, and ended up getting busted. But it would be nice to know that, like, if you're trying to sneak into it. I'm just joking.
I was gonna say, are we gonna go there?
I'm totally joking. If you're a venue listening, disregard that. We have your back.
hey, Lisa, in Salida, I was there in I played there. I had this band, Breaking and Entering, and we played there. There was we opened for Eric McFadden Trio in in some
at the Victoria. Yeah.
Like haunted house or something on top.
Victoria Tavern. It used to be a brothel. All my friends who worked there said this place is definitely haunted. It's definitely like female. I think it was probably one of the ladies that had worked there. And the Victoria Tavern was pretty much killed by COVID. Unfortunately, it's closed. It's not
what
open
a
anymore.
drag.
I know, it's such a, it like breaks my heart. I can't even tell you.
That was super cool. I remember like because they were when we got booked, we're like, where should we stay? They're like, you'll stay upstairs. I was like,
Oh my
okay.
God,
And
you stayed
it rooms.
upstairs.
Yep. So
Yeah.
wild. It was such a cool little place. Loved it.
Yeah. It was such a good venue. I saw so many good bands there. I remember Eric McFadden Trio had a relationship with Salida. I think it was maybe Steve Finch. I don't know, who brought him here all the time, but we have a couple promoters, but we've got a few new good venues. There's a barbecue place that actually has just opened. It's called Stoke, and they're like live music. That's going to be their big thing. They've really put in a lot of money. We have a couple really good venues here, and now BV Buena Vista has that's where Billy Strings is doing renewal, and they have the Ivy Ballroom and a venue now called the Lawn. And like Leftovers playing a 3-night run this weekend, and we are getting big names, big acts. Kitchen Dwellers came to the Ivy Ballroom. It's up and coming. I mean, it's a good place to see a show. I was telling Jordan, I think we should put that on the Venue Llama because we get good bands. We got some good places around here now. And I'm sure a lot of little towns are the same. They have their little local venues they want people to know about.
For sure.
Yeah, it'd be cool to talk to them, kind of see how that all came about and like the transgression of that.
Nice.
Of you mean the
just
the
talking
Victoria?
to or a venue like that, just seeing like how the process of how they've just been able to kind of grow and get bigger bands and all that.
Brian, I might have seen you play at the old Victoria Tavern.
It was one time I opened it was me and Eric, and we opened for Eric McFadden Trio. That was it.
Yeah.
So Lisa, I think you left
2005.
earlier.
I definitely saw them there, and I lived here in 2005. Yeah, I was
Lisa,
here.
you may have missed it earlier, but Brian came and played at Fire in the Mountain Interstate early on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Where do you play at Interstate?
Right in his
stand on a table.
Right, yeah. The green room was the walk-in cooler. Actually,
great green room. That was so cool.
Coldest green room in the
business.
business.
Carrots and celery while you're in there.
Yeah.